Welcome to Winter Views Series 1, Episode 9. I'm your host, Katherine Silva, Cat for short, and I'm a dark fiction author from Maine. Tonight we are discussing apocalyptic horror with our guest, Nick A. Zaino III. How are you doing this evening, Nick?
Not bad, not bad. Settled into the basement bunker in Lynn, Massachusetts. No better place to talk about the apocalypse than from a basement in Lynn.
I was saying it is quite the awesome room of books. Like, if you did have to spend a good amount of time in there, you certainly would have plenty to read and keep yourself entertained with.
Yes, that the thought has crossed my mind once or twice.
So, as I mentioned before, we are discussing apocalyptic horror this evening. This is our second discussion, so our first Redux episode on apocalyptic horror. Last week we discussed it with author Doug Rinaldi. And for any of our previous episodes, you can find those on my YouTube channel. I am a few episodes behind in getting those up, so do bear with me. I apologize for that, but I will be getting episodes 6, 8, and 9 up this weekend. Unfortunately, we did have an issue with episode 7 in that we didn't get a record on it, but we have that scheduled for a retaping soon. And by retaping, I just dated myself super hard. Um, so, talking about apocalyptic horror, my first question for you this evening is, what was your inspiration for wanting to write apocalyptic horror?
It definitely started with zombies. My day job is that I'm a journalist. I mostly write about comedy, but I pitched a story to a magazine years ago on sort of the zombie craze and how it was sort of dying down, but there was still a lot of great stuff coming out. And I hadn't really written short stories since college, which is to say, I had yet to write a good short story. Um, but I started thinking about. I was inspired by the books I was reading and the movies that I was watching to start writing my own fiction again. So it started with a few different uh, zombie short stories, uh, and I've been plugging away at it ever since then,
Okay. So,
trying to move on and expand from that, and not just do zombies, but trying to find something different to do with that genre.
okay. So, in your zombie stories, have you sort of dabbled in more of the slow zombies or more of the fast zombies, or do you do both?
It's definitely more the slow zombies.
Okay.
I'm more of a traditionalist. Actually, I went on a zombie walk around that time in Boston that went from downtown to Cambridge, and it was funny because you had two different contingents arguing whether everyone should be slow zombies or fast zombies, and the fast zombies kept rushing ahead of the slow zombies. Like, come on! Like, no, we're traditional Romero zombies. We walk slow. And like, we're never gonna get there. Um, but I tend to go with the slow uh, because it's more sort of claustrophobic. It's more
Mm.
suffocating. You tend to. It's something that you discount because one slow zombie is not terribly is not a huge threat. Actually, I wrote a short film that I've never made about how stupid humanity would have to be for there to be a zombie apocalypse when there's just the one zombie.
Hmm.
So uh, you really have to be kind of a silly person to approach the one zombie and then have it spread to all of humanity. But there's something I realized that a lot of the short stories I started with uh, start from a single person's point of view, and they have there's an isolation to them. So I've been trying to write more characters into the stories as I
Okay.
went along. But
Okay.
that's something that appeals to me about apocalyptic fiction. Like when you're alone with yourself and everything that pushed you into being who you are is gone. Well, who are you at that point, and who do you want to be at that
Hmm.
point?
So you're definitely focusing on more character-driven apocalyptic fiction versus like plot-focused, um, like people trying to save the world or uh,
Yeah, I think that I'm not sure I can write action well enough to do something like that fairly well. Uh, maybe I will be at some point once I've written a lot more. But the stories I cover comedy for a living, and one point you can make about stand up is if you the more personal you make it, the more relatable it's going to be, and the less likely somebody else is going to have the idea and 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 say the same thing on stage that you're going to say. And I feel like that's applicable uh, to horror and the zombie genre. Like I tried to figure out. Uh, I had one of the zombie shorts that's in the romantic zombie comedy, the rom zom com
hmm.
anthology, is about a guy who's trapped in the theater district shortly after the zombie apocalypse, and he hates musicals, and all the zombies in the streets are singing the songs from the musicals they came out of, and he discovers one way to disable that is to sing back to them, which
That's
wound up in a
awesome.
plot of a I forget which movie, but it wound up in a zombie movie plot a couple years ago, and it got to the end, and they're all singing to the zombies to mollify. I'm like, oh god. Ugh.
No, I have to agree. I feel like some of the better zombie films I have seen have definitely been more isolated, character-driven pieces. Um, I can't, gosh, I can't think of it for the life of me, but there was a really good one about a guy trapped in an apartment building. Um,
Oh yeah, when he's
and
playing drums at the zombies, that one.
yeah, that it
There's
just
some,
was really good, and his sanity was just kind of slowly leaving, and um, yeah, it was a good film.
the Berlin Undead is similar to that. It sort of takes place under at like in an apartment complex, which is a fun idea itself. If you're already dealing with neighbors is probably not great in the best of times, but dealing with neighbors in a not so great apartment building
Yeah,
during a zombie apocalypse is even worse.
yeah, I would imagine so. Um, so I that sort of let's see where I was going here. That sort of truncates a later question I was going to have, which was going to be what some of your favorite kinds of um, apocalyptic horror are. Obviously, zombies are definitely one,
Mm-hmm.
but have you dabbled in any other kinds of apocalyptic fiction, or do you have an interest in trying to do another?
Yeah, I do. I'm actually writing an apocalyptic short story now. I don't know how much, since I'm still in the middle of writing it. I don't know how much I want to say about it, but
Mm-hmm.
the mechanism for the apocalypse is loss of memory.
Hmm.
Um, it's it actually is based on a terrifying dream I have. I rarely remember my dreams, and when I do, it's usually something dumb. I went to the last dream I had that I remembered was going to a convenience store that only sold in bulk, and I wanted one chocolate milk. That's the kind of
Hmm.
dumb dream I usually remember. But this one, um, the idea of watching your memories leave you,
Hmm.
and then when they're gone, they're no, you have a imprint that something happened to you just now, but you don't remember what it is, and that memory is gone from you.
Hmm.
And that's what that's the story that I'm working on now.
Hmm. It's interesting. That it actually reminds me of this. It's not a horror movie, but there's a film that somebody did, and it is kind of apocalyptic, but where the characters in it start to lose their senses very slowly. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so things like their sense of smell goes first. And it just kind of like shows this. I think it's actually a romance of all things, but it's
Mm-hmm.
um, sort of shows people slowly losing their minds over the fact that they're losing their senses one at a time, um, and how society sort of crumbles. But I do like the idea of a society that's losing its memories um, very slowly, and what that could cause, what the ripples from that would be. That's a really interesting take. So of course we
Yeah,
all are want you to finish that, and
I'm hoping it's as interesting as the idea. That's always the tough part. Is you have an interesting initial idea and making the work as interesting as the idea itself.
mm, uh,
That's the tough part.
I bet it will be. Um, I bet it will be. Um, there's a couple people who are mentioning films in the chat. Rob Smales mentioned hashtag alive. That's as the one that might have been the apartment building
Oh
one.
yeah, I think that's the one.
There's two, and alive hashtag alive is one of them, but the one that I saw, I think, is a different one, and I don't know what the name of it is.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody else mentioned The Night Eats the World. I know
Oh, I haven't
that's.
seen that one yet. That's French, right? That one, I
I
think.
think that might be the one that I saw. That sounds
Oh,
incredibly
maybe.
familiar. It's been so long. And
The names are all mixing up.
well, that and just as a plus, my memory is terrible anyway. So, um, the apocalypse has already begun.
Well,
Um,
there are a lot of interesting kinds of. I do like. I watched the Omega Man today again. You mentioned that uh, last week in the interview as well, and it's one of my favorite ones that I saw as a kid.
mm-hmm,
That was my first. I think that was the first movie I think I ever saw that had an apocalyptic theme to it, and it seemed cool, and it's got this groovy soft rock 70s
mm-hmm.
soundtrack, and it's Charlton Heston in a captain's hat putting his 8-track in the convertible and driving around, and it's there was a sense of doom to it, but there's also it sort of made this seem kind of cool in a way, and that was a weird mix. I don't think that I was able to really grasp that that's what I was attracted to when I first watched
Mm-hmm.
that movie. But it's like, oh, this is, somehow this is made to be kind of fun, but also scary. And a lot of my favorite, I realized a lot of my favorite apocalypse kinds of films are comedies,
Mm-hmm.
or some of the books that I like the Bed Sitting Room is a like I think it's 68 or 69. It was a stage play by Spike Milligan from the Goons, and it had Dudley Moore, and it had Peter Cook
Hmm.
in it, and it's just English society trying to keep a stiff upper lip after a nuclear holocaust.
Hmm.
So it's just London in ruins, and there's like one
Okay.
guy on a bike who's responsible for all the electricity. Just and you pass by him, and he's like all chipper and hello, and everybody just trying to smile and and live through it. And when everything is obviously, there's a woman in it who's been pregnant for a year and a half.
Oh God.
That's never really explained. It's just she's just
Sounds
this
pretty
is the way
awful.
things go now. Like it's great. But yeah, Shaun of the Dead.
Yep,
Um,
I was just thinking about that one.
that was one of the films I saw at the beginning of wanting to start to write uh, short stories. So that there's a lot out there. There's a lot. There's so much I could mention. I don't want to just sort of blurt out everything, but I surrounded myself with books and lists and things like so I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't forget
Yep.
anything.
And we do have a section a little towards the end where we are gonna get into lists of books and films and things that have definitely inspired you or that you want to mention to the audience. Um, but first, I want to get back into the creation of an apocalyptic society or the apocalypse itself.
Mhm.
In terms of creating your apocalyptic world, what is your technique for creating a believable catastrophe or a dystopian society after the fact?
But definitely, so far, it's been a kind of isolation from everything else. I mean, because we're connected maybe to a fault right now in terms of even the technology we're using for this. We everybody's kind of philosophically, if not physically, kind of just right on top of each other. And what happens with it when there's a hard separation with that? What happens when it's one or two people uh, who can't do the things they do every day and they're surrounded? Everything's just made more difficult or impossible. The things that you did every day, that your routine is gone because half of those places probably don't exist anymore, or
Mm-hmm.
they're infested with zombies or crazies or whichever sort of there's some apocalyptic vampire stories
Mm-hmm.
as well. They're filled with something you just can't do everything you want to do anymore. The people uh, you interacted with every day, probably most of them are gone. Um, so the actual means of it, it could be anything. It could be nuclear. I haven't explored that yet. It's mostly the apocalypse has mostly uh, been zombie apocalypse. That's what I've written so far, um, and that's sort of I don't. There's probably a big debate over whether it's better to explain this stuff or not. Whether you want to get down to the science, or whether frightening. It's more frightening if things just start happening and you don't have an explanation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I probably tend to that's probably where I tend to wind up. If you don't get a full explanation of why people are turning into zombies, or why the there's germ warfare, or sort of.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more frightening to not know. I wrote a story that I'm hopeful that got accepted for an anthology that hasn't come
Ooh.
out yet, about what is about suicide,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea that you don't get to know what happened,
Mm-hmm.
why this person that you loved did what they did, and how terrifying that is to an individual, even when they try to reconstruct. I mean, I guess this is a personal apocalypse, not like a grand scale apocalypse, but I think it sort of applies to the idea that you try to be as normal as you can, but at every turn something is sort of thwarting you,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and you don't get to necessarily know why on a larger scale.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, does that Does that make sense? Is that
No, it does. It makes me think of Bird Box immediately. Um, just that concept of it isn't explained in the first book what's going on, but the fact that like a bunch of people do start killing themselves at random whenever they see whatever it is.
Mhm.
And the book takes it a lot more personally than the movie. In
Mhm.
fact, I really liked the book a lot better, but you do get this very deep sense of confusion
Mhm.
and loneliness, even though the character is in a house with a bunch of other people. They're all still kind of alone in a sense because
Mhm.
they've lost other people that are close to them, and they don't understand what's going on. And I do agree totally with the idea that it's scarier not to know uh,
Mhm.
the source of something and just to kind of have it happening
Mhm.
and to have people question what's going on. It's it is definitely scarier in my opinion. Um, but there are definitely people out there who prefer the explanation, more that sci-fi path where you are sort of buttoning it down and
If you can
giving it.
do it well. It's just
Yeah,
that so often the explanation is so much less interesting than the effect of the
yeah,
action itself.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
oh, everyone's batteries were in wrong. Like, well, that's anticlimactic. Yeah, it you've always got to, if you're going to explain it, it has to be an interesting explanation, and it can't be like somebody at a blackboard at the end going, "All right, well, we see why these germs were connected to this part of, you know."
Yeah, it's just another way for the story to kind of, I don't know, come to an unsatisfying conclusion for
Mhm.
me. Like if somebody gives you a reason that you're not wholly satisfied with, then it just, you can go through the entire book loving the thing and then you find out the reason behind it and it's just kind of like, no.
I think
Um,
that's why Robert Kirkman did The Walking Dead the way he did, because he said
yeah.
it always has to end some way. Either the military comes in and they wipe out all the zombies, or all the humans get wiped out. And his question was, well, what if it just kept going?
Yeah.
Uh, which I think some fans are probably now like, yeah, it just keeps going. Um,
Yeah,
from
and
the
it's
TV show.
I think it's in its last season, but they did
Yeah,
just announce another spin-off um, with two of the same characters, which should be interesting.
yeah, Negan and Maggie,
Yep.
in addition to the Daryl and Carol spinoff
Yes.
that's already happening. So somebody else posted today is like, well, thanks for letting me know they lived through the last season.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Well,
I mean, that's as a Daryl and Carol fan from pretty early on, I'll keep watching
mhm.
any show that features them pretty
Yeah,
happily. But yes, it is kind of a bummer to be like, all right, so there's at least you know that they're gonna make it out alive. Um,
yes. Well, here's the premise: Daryl and Carol and Negan and Maggie get an apartment in Manhattan and have wacky adventures in a coffee shop.
that would be pretty fantastic. I would like a Seinfeld version of those characters. There you go. That's your next book right there.
Yeah, I have some. I actually tried to swerve away from humor a little bit in the last few stories, that felt like it was starting to become a crutch. I'm trying to finish a novel at some point. But I I wanted it to be. I'm like 10,000 words into it still yet, but it's I wanted it to be more serious, and then I wound up writing in some characters that like part of the plot was that there's this kid finds this train that went off the rails in a lake on near Cape Cod, because apparently that's happened a couple of times in the history there, and finds something under there sort of waiting. But he also finds a family that was they're ghosts, but they were too polite to get off the train or ask anybody what happened, so they've just been sitting in their seats the whole time.
Wow.
I'm like, why can't I just why can't I just write something scary and serious like all my friends do?
I mean, I think it's totally, you can totally write something serious and also incorporate comedy. And there are so many wonderful examples of it out there that just I think that's even harder, honestly, to really balance those two, and create something that definitely has its humorous moments, but also really just like guts you at the same time.
I get kind of emotional at the end of Shaun of the Dead sometimes, actually.
Well, there's a lot of characters in that you'd fall in love with that just die, and it's really kind of sad. So
Yeah, the jerky boyfriend, Dylan Moran, is one of my
yes,
favorite Irish comedians.
God, I love him. Yeah, Black Books is one of my favorite series.
It's so fantastic. If you ever get a chance to see him live, he's brilliant.
Nice. I would like to.
And then the apocalypse is kind of, I mean, especially the nuclear apocalypse. That's I don't know what it seems like the ultimate slapstick to me. Like everybody gets the pie in the face at once. Like it's on the macro level the same thing as slipping on a banana peel. Like you did this to yourself in some way, shape, or form. You poor bastard. It goes back to the very first sort of explanations of humor, I think, and why it's funny. Like there was I still gotta finish this, but there are essays on why that sort of thing is funny, where it moves from funny to transgressive. But I think the apocalypse seems like such an extreme, but also seems believable, because we are so just stupid as a species. That would be nihilistic to say, but I mean, sometimes it seems like the all of the human race is that guy walking towards the banana peel, just refusing to watch where he's going. And like, well, guess that was bound to happen.
Yeah, and it's we're I'm gonna say also, just for those who are watching and those who may watch in the future, that this is we're talking about this during a very sensitive time, where this possibility is kind of terrifying, and by no means are we taking it lightly in this conversation. So just as a forewarning, we definitely are taking that into consideration when we're talking here. But to get back to the point, it is, I agree that there is definitely some humor in it. As soon as you started talking about it, I thought of the Peter Sellers movie, which, God, I can't.
Dr. Strangelove?
Thank you, Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
And so yeah, no, the inclusion of comedy and horror is, again, it's a fine line to walk, and some people can definitely pull it off better than others. Rob in the chat just said every King story has at least one laugh in there somewhere. He is correct. And Andreas mentioned A Boy and His Dog, which I'm not. I don't.
Yeah, I watched that the other night again too.
And that has apparently some pretty grim humor. I'm not familiar with that one, but
that one's going to be hard for modern audiences to swallow because it's grim, it's funny, it was influential. I don't think Mad Max happens without A Boy and Its Dog. It's also wildly misogynistic.
Okay.
But in its initial construct, which if I think when you tie it back to the original source material, is more. I think that was based on a Matheson novel as well, or a Matheson story. Is supposed to be satirical because it's basically mostly men who survive the apocalypse, and they're not terribly kind to women in that story. But it's one of those things where, all right, we're showing how piggish men can be, but also we're showing how piggish men can be.
Yeah.
So, what's your angle here?
So, probably inspired by that story as well. This is a game, and it is probably one of the best, funniest apocalyptic games that I have seen. And it's also horribly sad at the same time, but it's called Lisa the Painful. And it's a game about an apocalypse where all of the women have died, and it is just men left. And the main character, Brad, finds a baby girl. And
Brad.
Yes, Brad. And who he used to, do, I think, karate or something. He used to be a karate instructor, and he's living with his, best friends in their little hut, and he finds a baby girl, and he decides to take care of her as, like, a redemption for, I think his sister died, or something to that effect, when he was younger, before the apocalypse happens. So, kid grows up totally isolated, can't go outside, because of what will happen to her if all of these guys find out that she exists. And one day, and then there's also this, drug in the world that's called joy that people are addicted to that ends up turning them into monsters. And Brad is addicted to joy because it also makes him forget about these terrible memories from his past. And it's so then he, on his way back home one day, finds out that Buddy, the girl, is gone. His friends are dead. So he sets out to look for her. And it's an amazingly funny, well-written game. It's on Steam. For those of you who are interested, you should look into it. I believe that there's a trilogy of those games, but it's so good. It's so
Hearing
good.
you describe it, it's hard to think this is a game and not a movie or a book or a short story.
Yeah, and it's so silly because it's an RPG game. So you go through and you collect followers, like people go with him and join his journey to find Buddy. And it's just silly, but it's so funny. So yeah, anyway, just really good.
I'm afraid of losing myself in a game, and I lose myself in my own head enough that I feel like if I start a game like that, like I'll wake up 3 weeks later having ignored assignments and everything.
Yeah,
I'm afraid of the addictive qualities of games.
That's my problem with games too, is that I can get lost in them. If they're one of those games that's like a 35-hour game or something ridiculous. This, I believe, is a realistic, like, shorter, definitely has a concrete ending and, you know, plot points along the way that make it go by faster. So it's not one that you will never end, I guess, is the way to put it.
The last game I got addicted to was StarCraft, and I
Oh,
decided I needed to back out because
yeah.
I would wind up. That was college days as well, or post college days, and I'd start playing at 9 o'clock at night, and then it's 3 in the morning. It's like, but I did all right. Well, at least I defeated all the Zerg for this round, and tomorrow I'll play as the I can't remember the three different. I don't
Yeah,
remember the Zerg.
I should know. My boyfriend would be very angry at me for not remembering, but yeah, I
Sorry.
no, it's yeah. Uh, but anyway, back on our discussion because we're actually, gosh, we're getting towards 9 o'clock, and I want to make sure that we cover uh, all of the things here. Um, I guess we're actually at our section where we can start talking about um, apocalyptic horror and fiction, television, books, games, things like that, which we were already sort of doing anyway. So, in your list of recommendations, what do you have that has inspired you or that you have been reading or watching recently?
There's one I read a while ago. I could actually show you. I've got all this stuff like around me. I could actually show you the cover of one. This is one I'm not sure a lot of people have read. Far North by Marcel Thoreau.
Hmm.
It's apocalyptic fiction. It reminds me a little bit of The Road, the Cormac McCarthy book. It's got a lot of twists in it, so it's hard to talk about. It's got the sort of one main character that guides you through the whole thing, uh, and they part of. I have to refer to them as as they. The main character. What part of what they do is they collect books and try to reconstitute a library. They're trying to sort of figure out how to rebuild a society of not sure there's anybody else sort of out there, and
Hmm.
everybody you sort of meet is a potential enemy. Uh, I think that's as far as I can describe it without giving away some of the twists, because
Okay.
a few of them happen right at the beginning, and then it just continues. It seems a little. It seems a little darker and more personal, like The Road. Later on, it introduces some more sci-fi elements. So it's really got a lot of it packs a lot into one story.
Hmm.
Uh, another one that's I might as well show this, because I've got this is one
Yeah.
of my favorite things I've read in a long time. It's called Hollow Kingdom, and last year the Feral Creatures, the follow-up, was released. I have not yet read that. Uh, are we allowed to use profanity on this?
Yes.
There's
Yeah,
no,
that's
okay,
totally
good.
fine.
The lead character of this is a crow named Shit Turd, uh, and at the beginning of this, uh, Shit Turd is like this sort of hillbilly's kind of pet or companion, uh, and humanity basically gets wiped out, and Shit Turd has to figure out whether uh, Shit Turd is also gender fluid, because that's the way crows roll. So Shit Turd also has to figure out whether they belong more with the crows or with the humans, and it's surprisingly sort of touching. Um, the this sort of uh, this pull the every time I say the name, it's like I'm trying to talk seriously about a crow named Shitter, but it has this serious conflict over whether humanity is worth saving, and whether they can be part of that. and part of also what I love about this is a shit turd pairs up with a dog, and they part of what they want to do is save all the animals that have been trapped in places because their owners have turned into these zombie like creatures. It's it's got some really good horror elements to it. It's one of the funniest things, probably one of the funniest things I've ever read. I'll say, and I'm looking forward to reading the sequel. There was supposed to be an AMC animated series. I haven't seen anything happen with that yet. I'm hoping that that's still in the works. Uh, let's see, recent apocalyptic movies. What have I? Let me see. That I mean, there's a classics. I mean, Night of the Comet is brilliant. If you haven't seen that, you need to see that. Oh, recently, Blood Quantum on Shudder is a great apocalyptic movie. It's the idea is that Native Americans, because of their blood, they're immune to whatever's turning everybody into zombies. So now everybody wants in to their villages and establishments, and the answer is usually no. So there's a great political element to it. There are animated sequences to this also, which I think I'm starting to see a little bit more. You'll see like a 2 or 3 minute animated sequence in an otherwise live action movie. It's a great horror movie if you ignore everything else, but it's also got a political and social message, which I appreciated. Let's see what else. I have to say World War Z, the book, as something that made me want to write, and the Zombie Survival Guide, which I happened to read while Melissa and I, my wife and I, were house hunting, and it actually got in my head enough that we would go to a place and I would assess it by what Max Brooks said. I'm like, well, the windows are really close to the ground, and the front steps are concrete, and that bulkhead looks weak. That's not going to hold a horde, and I assessed every house we looked at according to the Zombie Survival Guide.
That's awesome.
Turns out most houses not very good for zombie survival.
I'd be lying if I said that I have not considered what would happen if I was at work and the zombie apocalypse happened, because I work in a giant sporting goods store, and so I have like detailed what weapon I would grab, where I would hide, what the best exit to get to the front door and out to the parking lot would be. Yeah, I mean, but that's, horror writers
it pops
for
into
you.
your head.
Yeah.
It pops into your head sometimes. You're just walking around during the day.
Yeah, well, I've had 15 years to think about it, too, so.
You're at the mall leaving the movies or something. You're like, all right, if they came from here, where would I go? Another movie that I just saw, it's a 2012 movie, but it's an indie movie that was actually made in Massachusetts, either Massachusetts or Connecticut. It's a New England movie called The Battery, which is two guys who were teammates on a baseball team, and it's another one of those sort of stories where the zombies are the outside element. The main element is their sort of uneasy friendship, because they knew each other, but they weren't. It's not like these are best friends, and they sort of treat what's happening differently. There's one guy who's fine killing every zombie that they see, and there's the other friend has qualms with that because he still sort of sees them as human, and the one friend is trying to desensitize this guy he thinks he's not going to survive if he doesn't start treating these things like monsters that you have to kill. I quite enjoyed that because that's the kind of story that I'd like to write.
Hmm.
That sort of personal story.
Yeah.
Uh, Train to Busan is also
Yeah.
a wonderful
So good.
zombie apocalypse movie, and what was Soul Station? I think is the animated prequel.
Yep. Yep.
That was. I haven't seen. Have you seen the sequel yet? I can't remember what the sequel is called. But I haven't seen
I
it
have
yet.
not seen the sequel yet. Um, we did start watching the high school one, the All of Us Are Dead one, or All of Us Will Be Dead, or something to that
Yeah.
effect. They do reference Train to Busan in it, which is kind of wonderful.
Hmm. Oh yeah. I haven't started that yet. Another personal story, Apocalypse One, Station 11, which the book was great. Uh, I liked the series. There are places where it diverged from the book quite a lot, but it's hard. It would have been hard to do exactly what the book does because the book jumps from time to time and makes connections by the way it organizes the story. So
Mm.
you'll see a connection between a couple of characters just because the story is told out of sequence and these two things are put next to each other and you realize sort of what the connection and it could be an actual connection as in these people knew each other or it could just be one person has uh, I'm blanking on the actual object but just has an object somebody else had
Huh. Okay.
before and so you sort of see this sort of connection, this sort of creeping order in the chaos sort of
Mm.
thing, and that winds up being a weirdly optimistic note because
Hmm.
it's sort of in the book. The sense that I got is that you know nothing's ever necessarily completely destroyed.
Okay.
It moves on somewhere else. Somebody else might have that vacation snow globe or something. It was something as a snow globe or a paperweight. Somebody else might have that. They might not know the person that was attached to it before,
Hmm.
but somehow that person, a little bit of them, gets taken into the future, even
Hmm.
if they're not there, and spread
Okay.
around. So, yeah,
Huh.
I made all these lists. I can't. I don't. I take up all the time. I enjoyed Colin, the zombie movie. Have you seen that?
Well, ironically, my boyfriend's name is Colin, and so he owns the
Oh,
movie. I have not seen it yet, but it is definitely on the to watch list.
so how do I not ruin it? It's from the zombies' point of view. I don't know if you know that
I
about it.
think I did know that, yeah.
Yeah. There is one particular scene in there that is one of the scariest I've seen in a zombie movie uh, because of the way it handles sound.
Okay.
Uh, because it's from Colin's point of view, you see how to be vague and specific. You see an attack, and you hear like the human response to it, and, but the camera rarely focuses on the humans.
Hmm.
You just get to hear what's happening to them
Okay.
as they're sort of experiencing their last moments.
Yeah,
And,
that
and
sounds
it's
scary.
yeah, and you hear it from. I mean, the movie was made for something like $27. Not counting. I mean, the guy was a filmmaker who pulled in a lot of favors
Hmm.
apparently for special effects and things, so that's not counted in the budget. But just sort of where he is in the house. Um, Everything sort of, and I gave away that he's in the house. All right, I was trying not to give away that part of it.
It's okay.
But you hear the stuff all happens in the distance, so it's sort of muffled in a way. It's just shot really well. I found it really terrifying. So something, if you want to watch this movie like at 3 in the morning, when everything else is dark and the world has, for all intents and purposes, disappeared, it's that might be where that scene works best.
Okay. All right. I will mention, because there were a couple things in the chat here. Miracle Mile is mentioned as a great Last Night on Earth movie, and then The Last Man Alive, which is a book, and it's about a green cloud that turns everyone to stone, and only a group of children survive because they're in an airship. And above the cloud. Sounds really interesting. I hadn't heard of it, but I will make sure to put it in the notes for this video. I also would like to quickly mention, because I had mentioned these before, but if anyone else is looking for other films, A Quiet Place is a really good apocalyptic film. And then for games, The Long Dark and The Last of Us, which is going to become a TV show, are also really good to note. So getting into our last questions of the night, the super fun questions, which are, one, what would your go-to apocalypse weapon be?
That I have to defer to Max Brooks again on that, which the suggestion in the zombie survival guide, and I'm assuming it's zombies. I actually shouldn't assume that the apocalypse is zombies, because I don't know if the same weapons apply. But something, some sort of hand fighting weapon, something like a knife or an axe. That you can swing sort of freely, and a rifle that you could, like a World War II style rifle that you could actually make ammunition for if you really needed to. Those are the two things that I remember from that, but I defer to Mr. Brooks for that.
He's got a point. Ammunition definitely being one of those things that you might have few and far between. And I have mentioned this in a previous video, but I do have custom-made apocalypse weapons that my boyfriend made for me that are
nice.
made of bike gears, actually. So
see, that's caring. That's a thoughtful gift.
There's a set of 2, so I can dual wield, which that's like my, and they've got handles, taped up handles, so so that's mine. And as for the other question, what role would you play if you were in a community living after the apocalypse?
Patton Oswalt has a great routine about if he winds up in Mad Max, he's just going to be the guy on the stockade in the front of the car that everybody else gets to abuse because he's way too soft. He doesn't have any apocalyptic skills. I'm not sure that anybody's gonna need a troubadour or somebody to cover the stand-up comedy scene in the post-apocalypse. But what it makes me think of is that I think about this a lot when I'm watching these sorts of movies. Like, I have MS and I'm diabetic, and I take specific medicine for that. Like, so what happens to these people when that medicine isn't being made anymore? What happens to me a year after I don't have my MS medicine anymore? So the role that I think I wind up playing is the go on without me guy.
Mm.
That's what I feel like. That's strongly in my future. Like, no, we're not going to leave you here. Like, you have to
Yeah, I
just
mean,
leave me in.
being the guy that saves everybody else, and like blows up a bunch of zombies, or takes out the bridge that keeps the
Yeah,
zombies from civilization or whatever.
yeah. Leave me
Um,
here with the grenade. I'll pull the pin when they're
yeah,
close. That's
yeah,
that's going to be me
yeah. See,
in any apocalypse.
that's respectable. That's a respectable role.
If I manage to time it right. Uh, if I don't, well, not so much.
So we are at the end of our program, which was especially fun. So I want to thank you, Nick, for coming out this evening and talking to us about apocalyptic horror.
Well, thanks
Um,
for having me. I appreciate it.
that was a lot of fun. And for anyone that missed the majority of it, do not worry, because I know we had a few people that came in at the end. You will be able to see this up on the YouTube channel afterward. Um, I will be posting, hopefully, the last 3 episodes that we've done over the weekend. So, hopefully by end of Monday, that's my weekend, you will be able to view all of these and have all kinds of apocalyptic horror things to watch and read and play, or feel inspired for whatever project you might be working on. Um, so, that being said, next week we're doing this again. We're talking about apocalyptic horror all over again, because that's just how the interview schedule shook out. We're talking about apocalyptic horror with Elaine Pascal next Thursday, March 17th, at 8 p.m. And yes, I am aware it is St. Patrick's Day, so bring your Guinness with you and saddle up for an hour of awesome talk about apocalyptic horror once more. And then that'll be all. So thanks for everybody in the chat for being so awesome and chiming in with some selections for us to talk about. And we will catch you next time. So thanks again.
So, thanks for having me on.